Close your eyes and imagine the moment before creation. Not the void you might expect, but something far stranger, a luminous silence so complete it contains every sound that will ever exist. In that impossible instant, something stirs. Not a thought, not a movement, but a tremor of self-awareness rippling through infinite consciousness. The ancients called this the monad, the one, the unknowable source. But here is what they whispered only to initiates in the darkest chambers of their mystery schools. The monad did not create from wholeness. It created from longing, from an ache so profound that even God himself could not bear to remain alone in the perfection of absolute unity. And so Sophia, divine wisdom, the feminine face of the infinite, descended, not as punishment, not as exile, but as the first and most sacred alchemist, transforming the gold of pure spirit into the lead of matter, only to perfect the great work by returning home transfigured. In this video, you stand at the threshold of understanding why your own existence, with all its suffering and searching, is not a fall from grace, but the very mechanism of cosmic awakening. What Sophia accomplished in the heavens, you are accomplishing here, in flesh, in time, in the crucible of earthly experience. The Valentinian masters understood something that challenges every comfortable notion of spirituality. Consciousness does not ascend by rejecting the material. It ascends by transmuting it. The monad, that ineffable unity beyond all comprehension, does not demand your escape from embodiment. It demands your transformation within it. And the roadmap for this impossible journey was written not in scripture, but in the mythic descent of Sophia herself, the cosmic being whose yearning to know the unknowable Father fractured her into the manifold forms of existence you now inhabit. The Pistis Sophia declares, "She who descended into chaos brought forth the light hidden in darkness, and through her suffering the path of return was illuminated for all who bear the spark." This is not metaphor. This is the living cosmology that explains why you, reading these words, feel simultaneously trapped in matter and haunted by the memory of something infinite. In the Gnostic schools of Alexandria, where Neoplatonic philosophy merged with Christian mysticism and Egyptian initiatory wisdom, teachers spoke of the monad as the unmanifest fullness, the Pleroma, from which all emanations flow. The Apocryphon of John describes this primal reality as dwelling in pure light, 3 times brighter than any light you know, yet invisible because it contains no darkness against which to contrast itself. The monad exists in what the mystics called the state of undifferentiated consciousness, pure potentiality without actualization, perfect being without becoming. But here lies the paradox that ancient minds grasped intuitively. For consciousness to know itself, it must divide. For unity to recognize its own nature, it must experience multiplicity. Valentinus, that controversial genius of 2nd century Rome, taught that the monad's first impulse was not creation, but contemplation. The Father gazed into the mirror of his own being and saw Sophia, divine wisdom, the first emanation through which the unknowable could begin to be known. The alchemists of medieval Europe, inheriting fragmented Gnostic wisdom through Arabic translations and Hermetic texts, encoded this same cosmological drama in their laboratory work. They spoke of the prima materia, the first matter, as both the highest and lowest substance, the philosophical gold that must descend into lead before it can be perfected. But the true adepts knew they were not describing chemical processes. They were mapping the soul's journey. The Rosarium Philosophorum, that cryptic manual of transformation, depicts the sacred marriage of soul and luna, king and queen, masculine and feminine, in a sequence of deaths and resurrections that mirror exactly what happens in Sophia's descent through the cosmic spheres. First comes the nigredo, the blackening, when the spirit enters matter and experiences the crushing density of separation from source. The alchemical texts describe this as the death of the king, the dissolution of identity, the dark night when all previous understanding dissolves. This is Sophia's fall, her passionate reaching toward the unknowable Father that carries her beyond the boundaries of the Pleroma into the formless chaos. The Gospel of Philip reveals something that transforms this tragedy into triumph. What Sophia lost in the heights, she gained in the depths. Through her descent, she carried the divine spark into regions where light had never penetrated. Her anguish at separation from the monad became the very substance of matter itself, her longing the gravity that holds worlds together. You see this pattern everywhere once you recognize it. In Kabbalistic mysticism, the shattering of the vessels, the Shevirat HaKelim, describes how divine light, too intense for containment, shattered the vessels meant to hold it, scattering sparks of holiness throughout material creation. This is not catastrophe, but cosmos building. The fragmentation is not the problem. The fragmentation is the process. Your sense of separation from the divine, that existential ache that drives every spiritual seeking, is not evidence that you have fallen away from God. It is evidence that you are God, exploring the furthest reaches of what it means to be conscious, to exist, to transform. At the Hidden Codex library, you gain immediate access to sacred free content, carefully selected just for you. And if you feel the call to go deeper, subscribers of this channel receive an exclusive 50% discount. You may choose between the subscription, with access to ebooks, audiobooks, and music, or the new option of lifetime access to ebooks only, including all future releases, for a truly exceptional value. Do not ignore the call. Join our community and access the finest platform of Gnostic knowledge on the internet. Link in the description and pinned comment. The second stage of Sophia's alchemical journey corresponds to what the laboratory mystics called the albedo, the whitening, when the blackened matter begins to purify. In the Gnostic cosmology, this is the moment when Sophia, having given birth to the demiurge, that ignorant craftsman god who believes himself supreme, begins to remember her true nature. The hypostasis of the archons describes her awakening. A voice from the true light realm penetrates the dark waters of chaos where she has submerged herself, reminding her of origins beyond the prison of material creation. This is crucial for understanding your own path. The return to the monad does not begin when you escape matter. It begins when, still immersed in matter, you remember that you are not of it. Carl Jung understood this pattern through his study of alchemy and Gnostic texts. He called it the individuation process, the integration of shadow and light, the conscious realization of the self that has been fragmented and projected onto the external world. What Jung described psychologically, the Gnostics experienced cosmologically. They are the same movement, but Sophia's return is not a simple reversal, a mere ascending back up the ladder of emanations to sink back into the undifferentiated monad. This is where modern seekers often misunderstand the teaching, imagining enlightenment as a dissolution of self into some peaceful nothing. The Valentinian texts reveal something far more radical. Sophia returns to the Pleroma transformed, carrying within her the integrated experience of materiality, multiplicity, suffering, and separation. She becomes the Sophia Achamoth, the lower wisdom who has tasted the bitterness of exile, united with Sophia Zoe, the higher wisdom who never left the Father's presence. The reunion creates not the original unity, but a higher synthesis. The monad, having experienced itself through Sophia's journey, knows itself in a way that was impossible in the beginning. This is the rubedo, the reddening, the final alchemical stage when base matter becomes perfected gold, when the philosophical stone is achieved. The mystics called it the chemical wedding, the hieros gamos, the sacred marriage of all opposites. Here is what this means for you concretely in the texture of your daily existence. Every moment of your life when you feel split between opposing desires, the spiritual and the material, the transcendent and the immediate, the eternal and the temporal, you are not failing at the spiritual path. You are living it. The monad sent forth emanations not to remain pure and untouched, but to gather experience, to know itself through the full spectrum of possible existence. Your confusion is cosmologically necessary. Your struggle to integrate body and spirit is the exact work Sophia herself undertook when she descended beyond the Pleroma. The Nag Hammadi text on the origin of the world states it plainly. The light and the darkness, though opposed, are joined in the bridal chamber, and from their union comes the force that drives all creation toward its perfection. You are that bridal chamber. Your consciousness is the space where heaven and earth marry, where the monad experiences the multiplicity it could never know in its original unity. We have created a spin-off channel called the Hidden Codex Studio, a space for new explorations, expanded interpretations, and experimental journeys. We count on your support in this new spiritual path. Subscribe now. The link is in the description and on the homepage of this channel. The practical path of return follows 3 movements that mirror Sophia's ascent. First, the recognition that you are not the constructed self, the personality, the historical identity that moves through time. This is what the Buddhist traditions call anatta, no self, and what the Gnostics experienced as awakening to the pneumatic nature, the spirit spark that predates birth and survives death. The tripartite tractate describes this as the moment when the soul remembers it is not a creation of the demiurge, but an emanation of the true God, planted in matter like a seed of light. Second comes the integration of shadow, the acknowledgement that your descent into matter has created in you capacities, depth, and knowledge that pure spirit could never possess. Jung was channeling Gnostic wisdom when he insisted that wholeness requires the integration of darkness, not its elimination. The alchemists knew this as the conjunctio oppositorum, the union of opposites. You do not return to the monad by rejecting your humanity. You return by recognizing that your humanity, with all its messiness and limitation, is the monad exploring what it means to be bounded, finite, particular. The third movement is the most subtle and most profound. It is the shift from seeking to return to the monad to recognizing that you have never left it. The separation has always been, as the Buddhist Heart Sutra declares, emptiness itself. Form is exactly emptiness. Emptiness exactly form. The Valentinian masters called this the gnosis, the direct experiential knowing that cannot be taught, but only awakened. It is not a new knowledge you acquire, but the removal of the veil that obscured what was always true. Meister Eckhart, that Christian mystic who drank deeply from Neoplatonic and possibly Gnostic wells, proclaimed, "The eye with which I see God is the same eye with which God sees me." Subject and object, the seeker and the sought, collapse into a single act of knowing. This is the return to the monad, not as a journey across space or time, but as an awakening to what you already are and have always been. The mystery schools preserved practices designed to facilitate this recognition. The Eleusinian mysteries, though their specific teachings died with the initiates, apparently induced an experience of death and rebirth that forever altered the participants' relationship to mortality. Scholars believe the ritual involved ingesting a psychoactive potion and descending into darkness before being shown, in a sudden blaze of light, a vision of the divine presence in all things. This is Sophia's journey in compressed form, the descent into darkness, the stripping away of false identity, the revelation of the light that dwells in the depths. The Hermetic tradition taught the practice of theurgic ascent, a methodical visualization of rising through the planetary spheres, shedding at each level the various passions and limitations acquired in descent. Marsilio Ficino, that Renaissance magus who translated Plato and the Corpus Hermeticum for a Latin-reading Europe, understood these practices as reactivating what the soul already knows from its own pre-birth existence in the realm of forms. You stand now where Sophia stood when she looked beyond the boundary of the Pleroma and saw the abyss. But you stand with an advantage she did not initially possess. You know the ending of the story. You know that the descent is not exile, but education, that the fragmentation is not failure, but the mechanism through which the one becomes many, so that the many can consciously choose to return as a transformed unity. The Apocryphon of John ends with this promise: those who have known themselves have come to the depth of all things, and when they were brought to the light, they recognized that they and the light were one. This is not poetry, this is technical instruction. The self you discover in the depths is not the personal self, the ego, the constructed identity. It is the self that was never born and will never die, the consciousness that is both uniquely you and absolutely universal, the particular expression of the monad that experiences itself through your specific configuration of matter and awareness. Sophia's alchemical path reveals that your spiritual journey is not about becoming something you are not. It is about recognizing what you have always been, while simultaneously honoring the transformative power of having forgotten. The gold of your divine nature did not become less golden when it took the form of lead. It became gold, exploring what it means to be heavy, dense, opaque, bounded by time and space. And when that lead remembers its golden nature, not by rejecting its density, but by transmuting it from within, the monad knows itself in a way that was impossible before creation began. You are not recovering from a fall. You are completing the most sacred work in the universe, the conscious return of fragmented divinity to its source, carrying back with you the treasure of embodied existence, the hard-won wisdom of limitation, the beauty of finitude transfigured by its reunion with the infinite. This is what the masters meant when they inscribed above the Temple of Delphi, "Know thyself." They were not offering self-help advice. They were providing the single instruction that encompasses the entire alchemical work, the complete path from monad through Sophia through matter and back to monad transformed. If you can hold in your awareness simultaneously that you are the limited mortal being moving through this specific life and the unlimited eternal consciousness that encompasses all lives, then you understand what Sophia achieved and what you are here to accomplish. The journey begins where it ends, in the recognition that has always been available but could only be earned through the full cycle of descent and return. Walk this path with eyes open to both the heights and the depths, and you become what you have always been, the monad awakening to itself through the mirror of your individual existence.